Hello, and welcome to another Lickybirdy special. As always, let's listen to him make excuses for why he's been.
I'm not gonna. We're not gonna get into it. All right, it's a new year. We're gonna just go along, and we're just gonna go. New year, new me. All right, guys, let's go ahead and just talk about the first movie, Malcolm and Marie. And I've actually been following this movie for quite a bit, ever since the initial information came out of it, of Zendaya working with John David Washington, I believe. I was actually kind of excited to see her take on these more mature roles, as opposed to, most recently being, that girl in Spider-Man, the girl that really didn't do anything for a while. It was on Disney shows and such, and just most recently, within the last few years, has kind of shot back into stardom. So I was actually really excited to see her, be accompanied in such a role with somebody like Washington to really take a serious role. Now, did my expectations hold up? Firstly, I want to talk about the acting and the writing, just because I think in this film they kind of go hand in hand together. How some of the scenes panned out. A lot of the writing in just the basic scenes to where there is no actual arguments or anything happening. It's just kind of them talking. The scenes are really bogged down and feel kind of paced poorly and sluggish, and I feel like that has a lot to do with the writing. The acting themselves obviously is going to influence what the writing is based off of, like in scenes where it's just Malcolm and Marie in a room talking to each other, and they're not fighting and there's nothing progressively happening, but they're just having these very vague conversations of kind of just time filler, it seems like. But I mean, both of them in their own respective times in different parts of the movie, they put 100% into that scene, and I just felt like 100% wasn't put into the movie, but in different scenes they do really good jobs, and overall they do fine jobs. And I see a lot of comments recently about Washington's performance in this movie, and I think for the character that he played, I think he played it fantastically well. I think he was fine. There wasn't a whole lot of room. I mean, he plays a pretentious film director, but overall I think they both played their characters very well. The writing overall, I feel like, wasn't terrible, but when it's good, it's really good, and when it's bad, it's really bad, which is kind of a reoccurring theme for this movie, unfortunately. You have the different scenes to where the writing throughout the whole thing, they connect to each other. It goes from the beginning to the end, and it all cohesively makes sense. You have a lot of really good emotional showings from both of these actors, and a lot of wordplay that's put into this movie that's actually really well done. It's not like unnecessary filler words or making it sound smarter, say things that he doesn't know anything about. He's a film director in the movie, and he uses a lot of, big name actors and such like that. Isn't just base knowledge, really goes in depth about different things regarding the film aspect. His early scenes also, to where it's just Malcolm and Marie talking and there's not a whole lot happening progressive wise, is really what makes the film itself kind of feel very slow. Now going into structure and pacing, it took me about 2 days to finish this movie. Unfortunately, it's not that it was ever bad, it's just the pacing throughout it just feels really slow. It goes from positions to being really good to being really slow, and like I said earlier, when the good things are really good, the bad things are really bad, and the pacing in this movie is just one of those things, because a lot of the things are done right. It's kind of just pick and choose from scene to scene. It just seems like he wanted to focus more emphasis on some scenes more than others, so it just seems like he tries a lot harder on one scenes more than others. For the first hour or so for the movie, this movie flows really slow. We're watching these two people argue over and over and over again, and it's not bad. I'm not saying that portion of it's ever bad. It's just the last 30 to 20 minutes, this movie really picks up, and I really enjoy the last 20 to 30 minutes of the movie. And I wish the whole thing would have been structured like the last ending portion of the movie. A lot of the first half of this movie and the first few acts of it is just explanations. We're looking into the characters and themselves and seeing what the real issue is, because after each sort of act that they have in the movies, you can see the difference that they have, and we're learning more information, and we're kind of feeling a more, I guess, relativity to Marie's character. Another thing that I want to talk about that also falls into the categories of they're really good and then they're really bad is there's a bunch of camera angles in here that are really, really nice and pristine, and they work really, really well. Scenes where Malcolm's laying on the floor or he's walking outside, and there's shots from the bedroom showing the windows out and stuff like that. Those scenes are really nice, and they're really good still camera shots. They're just not practical for more emotional type scenes that are for this movie, and I felt like it just kept being more of a bounce back and forth between the two things of, well, do we want it to look like this? Well, now we have an emotional scene, so now we need to put it into a handheld shot so that way it, feels more fluid and we get more of the emotion, because that's just how you shoot those type of scenes. And while both of the shots that they do in this movie are really well, I think that once you switch back and forth to them far too often like they do in this movie, it just comes out more forced than anything. So I mean, again, they're not bad, it's just more of a back and forth thing. It should have just been boiled down to they should have just picked one to do for more of the movie, which is just, especially how I feel. If they were going to have these more still camera shots, they could have done that by over time, zooming in, doing these close-ups while it's still a still shot, you moving in to create more emotion on these scenes. I think that they could have worked a lot around with those. Now, I do try to keep these videos as spoiler free as I can, but specifics to talk about what entirely I didn't like about this movie, I will unfortunately have to spoil the ending portion of it. So if you do have any intentions to watch this movie, I would definitely click off now. I'm going to rate it afterwards. So throughout this whole movie, we want Malcolm to look at these things through Marie's eyes. And personally, I don't feel like Marie's character was ever in the wrong throughout this movie. I felt like she played this really well in her scenario and trying to keep her cool. But as we learn the differences of things that she sees versus how he sees for the film, we learn that Marie's character just wants to be, actually shown that she's worthful to his life. Throughout everything that she does for him, through and through, never really accepts her or really celebrates the things that she does. So when it comes down to the issue in this movie, she just wants to feel appreciated. She just wants this thank you from Malcolm for everything that she's done for him, everything that they've done together, and everything they were going to do together. She just wants to feel appreciated. And as we get towards the end of the movie, we see that these characters and the things that they've said probably aren't going to last very much longer as a cohesive group. We do finally get that ending. We do finally get that resolution of him finally saying thank you and her finally giving him back with that welcome. And I feel like right then and there, it should fade to black and the movie should end. I think that is a fantastic ending for this movie, and it probably would have made me like the movie a lot more. But again, when the good things are good and the bad things are bad, the movie sort of drags on itself towards the end. There's a last scene where Malcolm's trying to find Marie again, and she's outside, and he goes and finds her. And I don't think that scene is completely necessary. I'm going to go ahead and give Malcolm and Marie, a Netflix original, a 6 out of 10, maybe a 5. I don't know. They both feel interchangeable to me right now. Overall, this movie's fine. It works in a lot of aspects. I just wish it would have given us more with all the creative processes we have working on this, like Washington and Zendaya and the director themselves. I think this movie could have been really great, but overall, it kind of fell flat to me. So yeah, we'll go ahead. I'll stick with 6. I'll give it a 6. I didn't hate it, and